Welcome to a solo war game review from theplayersaid.com. I'm Grant. Tonight I'm going to give you my thoughts on a very cool solitaire-only war game called Aurelian, Restorer of the World. The game is designed by Tom Russell and is published by Hollandspiele. This came out in the fourth quarter of 2020, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and is the third game in the what is called the 3-cup adjustment system. The game deals with the subjugation or management or control of peoples by ancient powers, kingdoms, mostly the Roman Empire, but also Charlemagne. The 3 games in the system are Agricola, Charlemagne, and now Aurelian, Restorer of the World. So the game deals with you trying to control, manage, govern a region, dealing with different tribes and peoples, trying to keep them happy, trying to keep them under control as they revolt and rebel. You have to suppress those rebellions and dealing with those people. It's a very cool system. I'm going to go ahead and pan the camera to the right, because you can see the reason it's called the 3-cup adjustment system is the game is based on a chit pull mechanic where you have these 3 cups. One is called the hostile cup. You can see I have them labeled there. One is called the unfriendly cup, and one is called the friendly cup. From the hostile cup, you're going to draw out, based on actions you take and reactions that are created by those actions, you're going to reach your hand in, draw out a chit, and it's going to be a unit, barbarian, or one of the different kind of regions, peoples, and they're going to go onto the board. You're trying to keep them under control. You're trying to get your enemies under control and get them out of those areas so that you can score victory points. So these 3-cup system, it's really very cool. So for instance, and I'll talk a little bit about these actions, when you take, say, a battle action, when you actually openly combat some of the tribes in the area, it's going to tell you to move a chit from the friendly cup to the unfriendly cup, and then mix those up, and then you're going to remove one from the unfriendly cup and put it into the hostile cup. So it's this system of changing back and forth. You'll never get something out of the hostile cup. You'll never take an action that says, take one of the hostiles and move it down to unfriendly. That's not the way it's going to work. You can, though, however, get units from the unfriendly and go down to the friendly. Also, once you've built temples and kind of subjugated areas, and you remove all the resistance there, tribes that you have placed into the dead pool, if you have those temples, are going to go into the friendly cup. So I'm just going to show you, because the game here that you were looking at was a game that I completed and actually won. So you'll notice there in that friendly cup, I've only got 3 units. And at the start of the game, you're going to have about 12 or so. And over the course, they're going to move to unfriendly and then to hostile. Here you can see that the majority of the chits, there's a ton in there, are in the unfriendly cup. And then I also have quite a few in the hostile. But because I won and did a good job of keeping them under control, there's not as many in there. So I think a very revolutionary system that deals well with this concept, and I've really enjoyed playing them. I played Agricola first, which deals with Agricola trying to keep the Britannic tribes under control. I played Charlemagne, which is, the famous Charlemagne, and trying to unite his kingdoms and bring them under a common rule. And then now Aurelian, Aurelian was an emperor of the Roman Empire at a time when it was fractured. There were plenty of usurpers. The East and the West were divided. Lots of pressures from the barbarians on the Danube front. Also difficulties with coinage and the economy. All those things combined to make it very, very tough. Aurelian, in a period of, I believe it was 5 years, brought everyone together, got everyone on the same page, restored peace, and was known as the restorer of the world. So this game, you're playing as Aurelian, and you are trying to move these things around the board to make everything work out. So very quickly, I'm going to talk to you about some of those actions. And here is your Aurelian counter. And this is the guy that you're going to mainly move around the board a majority of the time. He has 2 sides. One is a +1 side, which simply means every action he's going to take to your die roll, you're going to add +1. Once he defeats Zenobia, here I'll show you Zenobia, who is a usurper or a pretender to the throne in the East. Once you defeat her and get her off the throne, you can do a triumph and flip Aurelian from his +1 side over to his +2 side. But Aurelian's going to literally move around this board taking actions. You can take an action without having to move, but the action that you take has to make sense. You can't suppress a unit that's 4 boxes away. In order to suppress a unit, let me put a unit onto the board because I've got them all under control. Let me put this red guy. So this is a Ravenna. This is a local group in Germania. Sorry, I said Ravenna. They have a 2 suppression value. So Aurelian cannot suppress them and get them to stop, revolting unless he moves into that space. So typically every action requires a move, but some actions can be done without moving. So what's going to happen is you're going to move, that's free, and then you're going to do a suppress action. You're going to take a die, it's an 8-sider. You're going to roll that die. I rolled a 6. You're going to add Aurelian's leadership value, which is a +2. So I have an 8, and I'm trying to overcome that 2 suppression value. Now, this isn't a great example because those guys are fairly easy to suppress. They're not real tough. So because I beat that value, you can't tie it, you have to exceed it. He's going to go to the dead pool. So now here comes the reaction. So you go to your handy dandy player aid, and the player aid is really, really good. So I took a suppress action up there in the left. It tells me to move a friendly to an unfriendly called a cup adjustment. And then it tells me to do 2 hostile reactions, which is to reach into the hostile cup and draw out 2 pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and do that adjustment. So I've only got a couple counters. I'm going to reach in. There, I put that in the unfriendly cup. And now I'm going to reach into the hostile cup and I'm going to do 2 reactions. So I draw out first. Ooh, a very powerful barbarian counter. And I'm just going to draw the next one, but you're supposed to do these one at a time. Ooh, I drew out a turn end chit. So we'll deal with the barbarian first. And I'm just trying to give you an idea of how this works. I may also do a playthrough, but we'll see. So you'll notice the Danube front, there are 8 boxes. And the Danube separates Rome, the Empire of Rome, from the Germanic tribes who are assaulting Rome. So along those areas, you have 8 different boxes. You're going to roll an 8-sider. Once again, I rolled a 7. You're going to find the number 7 box. I already have a barbarian counter there. I did end the game with 1 barbarian counter on the board. So because of that, I'm going to look to the 8 box. If the 8 box is full, I'm going to go down to the 1 box, etc. So he's going to go up against the 8 box. You'll notice I have a legion there that has a 2 combat factor. So very, very simple. I also have a wall, a +3 wall built in this region. And I'll talk a little bit about how you build those. So I'm now going to roll an 8-sider to try to overcome the combat value on that barbarian. So I'm +5 total to this roll. 2 for the combat value and +3 for the wall. I rolled a 5. +5 is 10. I defeat that barbarian. He's going to go into the the green barbarian box, and you can later do a campaign to go against the barbarians there because you've driven them back, and you can assault them, removing them from the table, gaining coins, and or maybe losing armies. So that's an example of a reaction. And then that second reaction I drew was a turn-in chit. I'm glad that happened. A turn-in chit is simply going to go into the dead pool. Dead pool is right here where you hold your defeated enemies, except for barbarians, which go into their yellow or their colored pools, green, red, or blue. Once two of those chits, or what is called a confederation chit, is drawn, those are going to lead to the end of the turn. Then you're going to go to the turn-in phase. So the goal of the game, really what it is, it's about managing your actions, understanding how those actions cause the tribes to react, and how that's going to lead to your turn hastily coming to an end where you can't take any actions anymore. Then at the end of the turn, you're going to go through a series of phases. You're going to do a build phase. You're going to take your income, which is shown right here. Right now, this is the end of the game. I have an income level of 49 maxed out. I did very well in this game, and I currently have a treasury of 38 coins. So if I ended at the end of this round, I could build a whole bunch of stuff. You only have 4 temples you can build, 3 walls that can be built, and each of those take a step. So it's 3 coins to put out the start of the wall. The start of the wall is just a +1 wall. And then the next turn, you can't do it all in the same turn. You have to then pay another 3 coins to get it to the +3. You're going to get victory points for that. The same with a temple. The temple starts out, you pay 3 to start a temple. These are temples to Sol, the cult of the sun, Sol Invictus. And you are trying as Aurelian to unite the empire under a single religion. So you are trying to build these temples. So that would cost 3, but it also is a 2-step process. The other thing that you can spend funds on in the build phase is to move the Aurelian walls, which are walls that are found around the city of Rome, and provide victory points, kind of a victory point multiplier at the end of the game. If you do everything you can and have built all of your walls, you're going to basically get a maximum of 12 victory points as a bonus at the end. So that's a very valuable thing, but you got to balance. You got to build your temples. You got to build your walls to protect. You get victory points from those. You get benefits from those. Those temples help you keep the areas clear of uprisings. If there's just a single tribal unit in any of those boxes at the end of the turn, a temple causes them to go away and go to the dead pool. If there are 2 of them, it causes one of them to go away and one stays. So that's very valuable. Those walls help you in the defense against the barbarians on the Danube front. This gives you a victory multiplier. You can also use coins to placate or bribe as an action. You can also use coins to recruit or levy new troops that you're going to put up here on the Danube front. These legions can actually go up to a 3 value. So, there is a 1 shown on the board, then you can go to a 2, and then you can max out at a 3. The problem with those is you're ultimately going to have to pay for those over the course of the game during the taxation phase. So you're going to have to pay for your armies to maintain them. So after the build phase, here, let me just get my little player aid. And I played this game like 12 or 13 times now. After the build phase, you're going to go to the levy phase. The levy phase, you're going to draw any one token blindly out of the friendly cup, and you're going to be able to recruit units from that pool based on their combat value. So if they have a 2 combat value, let me go ahead and draw one out just to show you. And I don't have a lot of units in here. So I drew this one. Their combat value is a 2. That means I can recruit 2 points of legion. So I can place a 2 legion onto a 1 box, or I can flip a 2 to a 3. Once you've recruited, you've literally levied those troops. It's going to go to the dead pool. So it's going to go out of your friendly cup. So it kind of hurts you in the long run because you need those things in that friendly cup. But that gives you soldiers to then be able to mount defense up there. So that's the levy phase. You can also pay to add troops. And I have found that getting troops and keeping troops can be very, very, very challenging. Then you're going to go through the Deadpool phase where you're going to literally, based on the status of what's going on here, you're going to clean this up. These turn-in shits are going to go back to the hostile cup. These red guys, because I have a completed temple and no other enemy units in that red region, these are going to go to the friendly cup. So that's very important. Get these temples up early, get them finished, because they're going to eliminate units, and then they're going to move those units to the friendly cup on your side. So that's what happens during the Deadpool phase. Then you're going to do the taxation phase. You basically move the treasury marker, and usually you're going to be way down at the bottom after you've spent your dollars. You're then going to move it all the way up to the income phase, but then you got to pay 1 gold for every strength point you have on the Danube of Legion. So it's going to be somewhere between 6 and 15 or so. If you had a 3 power Legion in all 8 of those boxes, it'd be 24. I've never seen that. I've never paid more than, say, 12 or 14, because typically what happens is you're redeploying your troops on the Danube to your army that is marching around with Aurelian, and you're going to lose guys as you roll poorly and lose battles. So you're never going to have a glut of troops. You're always going to have to fight that battle of managing the number of troops that you have. Then you go to the turn-in phase. The turn-in phase is just scoring victory points. You can score victory points in a number of different ways. One of those is for having these usurpers. You can see I have 2 of these named usurpers, Posthumus and Zenobia. I have defeated them. Because they are named, they are going to go to my Deadpool, and every round they're going to give me 1 victory point. They're never going to come out. I've destroyed them. So over the course of the game, you can earn 8, 10, maybe 12 victory points. There are 6 rounds in the game. So if you defeat Zenobia in round 1, which is something I recommend doing, you're going to, over the course of the game, get 6 victory points for her. Usually Posthumus, you're not going to be able to get till round 3, maybe round 4, because you just have a lot of fires to put out. So he's going to give you 2 to maybe 4 victory points. So that's a source of VP. You're also going to gain victory points for every finished temple in every region. Right now I have 4 finished temples. I would get 4 victory points. You're going to get a victory point also for every finished wall that's not in Rome, in the red area. So right now I have 3 finished walls outside of Rome. That would give me 3 victory points. You're also going to get victory points for the captains that you have on the board. You'll notice I have this guy. He actually broke off from my army. I placed him in Gallia, and he's helping me govern Gallia while Aurelian was around doing other things. I also have one down in the yellow region, which is where Zenobia was. Those guys are valuable because they'll sit there, and if an enemy unit is ever drawn from the hostile pool, that will go in one of those boxes where they are, it's going to be killed immediately and go to the Deadpool. You can also move them around and do different actions. They don't do as well as Aurelian, but they can do things like bribe, called placate. As you start seeing resistance build up, you can run over and pay 2 or 3 coins and have them go away. That's something they're very valuable at doing, just helping you to maintain control. But you're going to score a victory point for each one of those. I have 2 of those out on the board. You're also going to score a victory point for every strength you have in your army. I have 5. You're also going to score victory points here on the side of the income for every 5 coins that you have. So all of those things are going to total up. You're going to get somewhere between, early on, you're going to get 5 to 6 for the first couple of rounds. But you got to start building that engine up. And by the end of the game, you're going to be getting 15 to 25 points per round based on the number of temples, walls, the money you have, the army strength, your commanders out, those named usurpers, etc. Not having units in the enemy areas, you're going to score a victory point. So there's a lot of things you got to worry about. It's a victory point engine building type game, and you've got to get on that early. Hopefully, being able to, by turn 3 or 4, generate somewhere between 10 and 15 per round. One of the other very interesting things about this design, it's only 6 turns. You'll see here's the turn track. You'll notice that at the bottom of each of the rounds, so round 1, it's telling you have to have a VP threshold. You have to have 3 victory points at the end of round 1 or you lose the game. The end of round 2, it's 8, so you can see it doubles plus some. The end of round 3, it goes up to 20, so it starts to get a little harder. The end of round 4, it's 35. The end of round 5, it's 55, and by the end of the game, you have to have at least 85 victory points to win. If at any time at the end of a turn you do not have the minimum amount of victory points, you lose the game. So let's talk about some of the automatic lose conditions. There's a lot of them. If your treasury is ever reduced to 0 by various counters that come out or chits that come out, one of the Sassanid counters, it's if it's ever drawn, you're going to find the barbarian pool that has the most units. This one has 2. You'll see the green barbarians. It's going to activate them. They will be removed, and for each barbarian counter there, you're going to lose a gold coin. If that ever causes you to go to 0, you lose. Early in the game, if you ever roll a 1 or a 2 when trying to place one of those barbarians during the a reaction, if you roll a 1 or a 2, Posthumus is still in power as the usurper. You're going to have to pay him a victory point or a coin for him to take care of that. If you can never pay him a victory point or a coin, either one, you lose the game. You also, if your army strength ever reaches 0 because you lost battles or a campaign, you rolled very poorly, you lose the game. If you don't meet these victory point thresholds, ultimately at the end, if there's ever a usurper alive in any of the 4 regions, green, red, blue, or yellow, you lose the game. So those are kind of the... Oh, also, if there are ever 8 or more barbarian markers in the... 3 or more, 8 or more, I don't know what I'm talking about. 3 or more of these barbarian markers in these Danube boxes, which means they defeated your troops as they were spawned, you immediately lose the game. So there's many ways that you can lose the game. The way you win it, you have to have 85 victory points and all usurpers have to be off the board. So it can be very challenging. So that's kind of the basics of the game. I do want to do a playthrough, so I'll show you some of that. But I love this game. So I have played all 3 of these systems. This is by far my favorite. I think because it's a quick hitter. This one plays in 6 rounds. Agricola had 8 rounds. Charlemagne had 12 rounds. Charlemagne and Agricola also had a tactical battle concept where you were lining up your units on a card and literally fighting it out. So you, for combat, you might make 8, 10, 12 die rolls, depending on how well you do, and it just drags it out. And you're going to have 1 or 2 battles per turn almost in each one of those games. In this game, I thought they did a really good job. They really aggregated and really abstracted combat down to a single die roll. So when you were in a battle, and I'll show you this table, it's on the back. It's actually printed on the map for convenience. If you are ever in a battle, all you do is you add up the values. Let me grab a couple of these. Let me put, sorry. So let's say I'm battling yellow. This is going to be a big battle. So yellow's combat values here. So I've got 3 yellow chits. Let's say this is one army that's holed up in Antiochia. They have a 5 combat value. 2, 1, and 2. That's their combat value. So I'm going to look at this chart. I'm going to find the combat total enemy value on the top. You go over to the 5 row. I'm then going to roll a die. I'm going to modify that die in a battle based on two things: Aurelian's leadership value, either +1 or +2, and the number of army strength points you have in your army. Right now I have 5. Let's move it down to 3. So in this battle, I would have a +5 to my roll, which is good. So let's say I roll the die. I'm going to go ahead and roll it. Well, I threw it on the floor, which doesn't count, as we know, in solitaire gaming. I rolled a 7, so I did very, very well. You're going to modify that 7 by 5. I rolled a 12. So let's go back to that table. With 5 combat value, I rolled off the chart. The chart only goes to 8. I'm going to lose no units, and I'm going to kill all of these units. So battle, in essence, is a foregone conclusion. The designer, Tom Russell, kind of said, hey, the Roman legions are powerful, they're well-equipped, they're well-trained, they're going to defeat the barbarians. But what the trick is the legions are going to take losses. Remember I said one of the ways to lose is for this army strength box to go down to 0. So let's take a look at that table one more time, and I'll talk to you one more thing about battle. If I ever roll a 1, so if I ever roll a 1 is a 1. It never gets modified by any other factors, the battle value or leadership value of Agricola, nor the army strength points. It is literally just a 1. So let's say on that 5 column, right there, I rolled a 1. That means I'm going to lose 4 units. I won the battle, but my legions are decimated and I'm going to lose 4 units. In our example, I only had 3 units, right? So I'm going to have to lose 4. 1, 2, 3. There, I've hit 0 auto loss. So I really feel like that was a good change. I enjoyed the tactical concept of Charlemagne and Agricola, but it made both of those games, Charlemagne, frankly, is almost a 2-hour game, 90 minutes to 120 minutes. Agricola can be played in about 75 to 90 minutes, but the more battles you have, the longer it's going to be. So I thought that was a great change where Tom made this kind of aggregated, abstracted concept of combat. Very well done. I also like the makeup of these charts. Very cool. The more enemy value you have, you can see up to 7 there on the right. You roll a 2 or a 3, and you only modify it 1 or 2, you're going to lose 2, maybe 3 armies, and that is very hard to replace. So the lower strength, 1 and 2 columns, I can roll as low as a 4 and not have modified 4 and not have any losses. But that same 4 on the 7 column would mean I have 3 losses. So you got to be careful. You can't go into battle willy-nilly because you can always roll a 1. It is always possible to roll a 1. So I always look at things and I decide, it's not worth it to do a battle there. I'm not going to do it. The next thing I wanted to show you here is the campaign chart. Because a campaign is where you are going against the barbarians holed up in this barbarian pool. So there's no combat values. That's just 2 barbarian chits. So number of barbarian units in pool 2. Once again, I roll a die. I rolled an 8, so I rolled really well. I'm going to go here. I'm going to take 0 losses. So the first number in that column is your losses, and I'm going to gain 2 coins. If it had 3 chits and I rolled an 8, I'd go get 0 losses and gain 3 coins. If you go all the way up to here, if there are 9 barbarian chits in one pool, one, you're doing something wrong because you should have campaigned a long time ago, because there are some nasty things like the Sassanid counters and the Confederation counter that if you pull those out and you have a ton of barbarian chits, you're going to be in trouble. But you can see there that same roll of 8 is going to cause me 1 loss, and I'm going to gain 4 coin. So very well done. I feel like the combat system in this one is absolutely right. It feels good. It's not as long. It's not as involved. It's abstracted down to 1 die roll. Now, I will say this, that 1 rule kind of bugs me a little bit. Because I'm going to be honest, there's been many, many battles that have caused me to lose where I had a lot of units, They had a lot of units and I rolled a 1. But Aurelian was a +2 leadership value and I had 5 army strength. And man, that just destroyed me. But them's the breaks, right? That's just the way it is. So I really like that battle system. The actions are also very, very cool. Remember, the whole concept of the game is about managing these cups over on the right. There are very few actions that go move the chits in your favor. Some of those are if you assign, if you break off one of these officers from your army and put them into a locale, you're going to move a chit from the unfriendly to the friendly. Doesn't happen a whole lot. You're only going to do that 2, maybe 3 times a game. Once you put an officer down, the only way that he gets removed is if a usurper springs up in those regions. A usurper is going to spring up if there are units in 3 different boxes. So you can see up in the blue area, there's only 4 boxes. So if I get units in 3 of those 4 boxes, a usurper is going to come out, and then this guy's going to get removed. So I'll have to then do it again. But I like that concept because it thematically, you're leaving a garrison behind, and that guy is kind of greasing the wheels of the tribes, and they like that. They feel secure. One other one that moves from the from the unfriendly to the friendly is the placate action. Placate, you're going to move an officer or Aurelian into a box, and you're going to pay off those guys so that they just go away. You're going to pay them up to, I think it's half of their resistance value, because you can't do it if they're on the warpath. Half of their resistance value rounded up. So if they have a 4 resistance value, so here's a good example. This Tiana unit has a 3, no, that's their combat value. No, that's their combat value. This is their resistance. They have a 3. I'm going to have to pay 2 coins. Half of 3 is 1.5, rounded up is 2. If I pay 2 coins, they're going to run away. Why is that important? I don't want that resistance to build up because I don't want a usurper to come back on and mess me up. You can't finish temples and walls when a usurper is there. Your officer is going to be replaced. And ultimately, that can lose you the game because Aurelian may be way up here in the blue and things get out of control down here in the yellow and you get a usurper in round 6, you lose the game. So what I like to do is I like to put an officer in the yellow area and an officer in the blue area. Once I have those under control, leaving those officers allows me then to kind of clean up the center and focus on the barbarians and the Danube front and worry about opposition that is growing in the center. If I really need to, I can move those officers around and buy people off. So those 2 actions are very cool that manipulate the cup in your favor. Everything else, though, manipulates it against you. When you open combat in a battle, you move something from the unfriendly to the hostile, 1. Then you're going to take a couple hostile reactions. If you do a siege, you're going to move something from I think it's the friendly to the unfriendly, and then the unfriendly to the hostile. So those can build up very quickly, and they can cause you a lot of damage. Suppressing does the same thing. It moves from the unfriendly to the hostile. Marching, the armies that are on the move rile people up and they want to fight you. So I really like the way those actions work, and they work well together. In the rule book, it talks about one of the main focuses of this game is figuring out how to use what actions when, in what circumstances, and for what reasons. As you do your actions, you can feel things starting to spiral out of control. You know, once again, that when you pull certain chits, like the turn-in chits, your turn's going to end. The other ones I mentioned earlier, this Sassanid chit, I can't find the confed. I don't know where I put that. There it is, the confed. So this Sassanid chit, I'll show you these. These are also typically in the hostile cup. They'll move up and get in the hostile cup. The Sassanids, if that is ever drawn and there's not a yellow usurper, they're going to cause kind of a revolt, and the barbarians in the pool are going to move on the front and take away your coin. The Confederation is going to rile them up, and a certain front that has the most is going to attack. So those are very cool. I think all those chits are well done. I love how the management of those chits goes. I also really like the razor's edge of trying to maintain your army. You don't have a lot of coin in this game, so you can't have every Danube box with a 2-power legion or a 3-power legion in it. You can't afford it. You've got to pay upkeep every single round. What you're trying to do is really get a good start in building your temples and your walls, so you need to have free coins freed up. So sometimes you're going to have to let your Danubian front be a little bit out of control. You may have units coming in and losing battles, but you got to clean off those barbarians who are in these boxes because you can lose the game that way. But I love that management because it's very tense, very difficult, and if you don't do it right, it can spiral out of control very quickly. You'll find that you only have 1 or 2 power in your army strength, and you have no units on your Danube. You have no way of getting your army strength up. The way you get your army strength up is very, very cool. You're going to do an action that's called redeploy. A redeploy action can be done in any of the fronts as long as there's not a usurper, as long as there's not a usurper in those regions. So if Aurelian is in the green region, he doesn't have to move. He can pull troops from the Danube box, so I can take one of these 2 powers, knock it down to a 1, and then bump up my army strength so that I'm better in battle and campaign. So I'm going to get more bonuses. You also score victory points for having a high-valued army, so you got to balance that. Really love that tension. The army can be very, very challenging. One other thing that I really, really enjoy is the way you score victory points. I just think it's very cool that I'm building something. I have to invest in that. I love that it takes 2 rounds to finish something. You start a wall. The next round, if you pay 3 coins, you can finish it. If you can't finish it, it's just kind of in a perpetual state of construction. It offers a benefit, but not as good a benefit as if you finish it. I love that concept. The temples are very cool during the, what's that phase called? During the turn end phase, when you're taking care of the dead pool, if you have a temple in that region, you're going to remove all units in those boxes if you have a finished temple, if there's only 1 unit. If there's 2, you're going to remove just the topmost unit, and you'll have 1 unit there left. That's a way to keep those the resistance under control. Really love that concept of that building. I also like that you have to continually push your income up by defeating usurpers, finishing temples. Your first temple, you get 1 income. Your second temple, you get 2 income. Your third, 3, and your fourth, 4. So just from those 7, 9, 10, you're going to get 10 income, and that's going to benefit you a lot because 10 income, you can do a lot. You can buy new units, pay people off, build more things, etc. Really enjoy that concept. In fact, I think the only thing I don't like about this game, let me think very clearly before I say this, it is not that you have to do certain things or you'll lose, but the reality is that's the way it is. I have found I've played now 12 or 13 times. I've only won twice. I won early on, like my third play, but I think after I did it, I was like, oh, I messed some things up and I probably wouldn't have won. For instance, one rule, and then I'm not going to talk about that. I'll talk about that as something I don't like. But if you don't go after Zenobia in the yellow region, you're not going to win. Frankly, you've got to get her off the throne and control this area. There's a couple reasons for that. She is going to give you a victory point the whole time. You got to get that done the first round, maybe the second. You got to invest in that. The other thing is, if you can get a finished temple there, all of those yellow units, and I think the most units in the game are in the yellow region. I think there's like 10 of them. Those are going to be in the unfriendly and potentially the friendly cup, helping you to slow down the impact of your actions on the tribes. Because the more chits you have in a certain cup, the more the worst chits aren't going to come out. It's a percentage thing. So I feel like you got to do that every time. I have tried to win without doing it. I've tried to win with going to posthumous. It just doesn't seem to work. By the time I get up there, defeat him, this is out of control, and then I'm starting to have a lot of trouble in the middle. Or I've lost a lot of troops, and I can't seem to get enough money to do the things I need to do. So I feel like in this game it is scripted. I feel like you got to go after the yellow first. You got to build your infrastructure, then you got to take out posthumous. And I just feel like if you don't do that, I'm not sure you're going to win the game. Another thing that I don't like is there are a lot of little rules that you're just going to forget. And it really bothers me. I think the player aid is really, really good. In fact, they actually remind you of a lot of these little rules that you're going to forget. It's very well done. Let me tell you about a couple of the rules that just killed me at the first couple games. So when you do a campaign against these barbarian pools, the red, the blue, or the green, and I win there, I'm going to remove those barbarians to the dead pool. And remember, I'm going to get a certain amount of coins to my treasury that I can then use to build later. For every 2 of those I remove, I get a free replacement on the Danube front. So if I remove these 2 from the pool, guess what? I free recruit, and I'm going to go ahead and throw that out. Man, I can't tell you early on how many times I forgot that. And ultimately, it ends up killing you because you cannot afford to continue replacing your units by spending money. It's just impossible. You can't do it. You don't have enough money to do that and build things. So I wish that rule was written on the board. I really do. I wish right above here it said that. I feel like right here, it says Aurelian walls. It tells you what the Aurelian wall does. I don't know why they didn't write that above the board. That's a nitpicky thing, but that's an example of a rule that you're going to forget time and time and time again. The other rule that I had a lot of trouble with the first couple, 3, 4, maybe 5 plays, if the friendly cup is ever out of chits, and that happens fairly often, and I have to reach into the friendly cup, and because of an action I took, and move something from the friendly cup to the unfriendly cup, if I cannot do that, I then have to move a chit from the unfriendly cup to the hostile. There's always chits in that unfriendly cup. I've never seen that get down to more than or less than maybe 10. So there's always those chits. So that's a punishing thing, but in actuality, getting more chits in this hostile cup means the bad stuff, the turn-in chits, the Sassanid chits, and the Confederation marker, the more chits I have, the less chance I have of drawing those out, and that's better for me. Once I got that rule right, man, I felt like my games were going very, very much better. And that's just something I wish that was also written somewhere on the board. I don't know where, and I don't think it's written on the player's aid. The player aid, maybe it is. Let me, I don't want to eat my words. You know what? I don't see it. But that's a simple rule. It's something you gotta remember. Also, the 1 value. There were a couple times early on I rolled a 1 and I still modified it and won. You can't do that. So I wish that was a little maybe written on the battle board somewhere. I just think those little things add a lot to these games because they're solo games. You don't have someone to remind you, and it helps you play the game better and right, frankly. Those are kind of examples of 3 things that I wish they maybe had just put on the board. One of the rules that I have for solo games, if I can't play the solo game without referring to the rule book every 5 minutes, I don't like it. Now, that's not the case here with Aurelian. I do feel like I had to refer to the thing quite a bit. One other thing, there's no turn sequence or sequence of play. It's on the player aid. There it is, the sequence of play. Man, why wasn't that just put here? it just helps with the playability of the game. So those are probably 4 things that I didn't like, that I wish would be improved in some of these later versions. Because, man, those little rules make a huge difference. And it's just remembering them. I never mean to not remember them, but sometimes I just forget. The other thing about this game is very simple graphically, but I think it works. I like the colors. I like the symbols. To me, it's very, it reminds me what I have to do and what those things, how they affect me and help me. They're not fancy. You know, that's not a real fancy graphic. This isn't a real fancy graphic. Heck, even the whatchamacallit, the Usurpers, Zenobia and Posthumous, you know, those aren't great images. They're okay, but very functional. I do like the graphic layout of the game. I do like the map, although it's very stark. I feel like maybe they should have put some relief on it. One map that I really liked from Hollandspiele was Stilicho. It had some relief on it and just looked some color and looked a lot better, I think, than this. You know, the real value of a game is in how it plays. I just also believe that the look and feel of things needs to be stepped up. But I'm going to tell you, these solo games by Tom Russell, they're amazing. So if you haven't guessed it, this is one of my favorite solo games that I've played from Hollandspiele. I've played Wars of Marcus Aurelius, Stilicho, Agricola, Charlemagne, and now Aurelian. I love these games. I love this game. I think it's great. This game will make my top 10 list of 2020. And it's a game that I think if you like solo war games, if you're into the Roman history at all, get out and get this, man. This 3-cup system is phenomenal. It is very interesting and very fun to try to figure out in game. So you gotta have some thought into it. You gotta think about it. You gotta work it. You gotta figure it out. And I like that. I also like that this game is not winnable very easily. It's going to take some effort. Now, I do believe if you focus on Zenobia's region every time, I think you're going to win about 60% of the time if you can somehow get that done quickly. If you don't, you're going to lose, I think, 80 to 90% of the time. So really like this game. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed playing it. Had a great time with it. So thanks for watching my review and my thoughts. I'm going to put a play through together just so you understand how the mechanics work a little better. I showed you some of them, but I will say this. I watched Wayne Hansen's video on the game. While he did some things wrong in his first video, don't we all? I mean, I probably still do something wrong. I watched his game and I was like, that's what that rule means. Because sometimes a rule written doesn't always clearly jump off and help me understand how I'm supposed to do it. But I appreciate Wayne Hansen doing that, sharing those videos, because it helped me out. He got his game about 3 weeks before me and was able to shoot videos and put them up. I've only had this game for about a week and a half. I've played it now for pretty much nonstop, and now I'm finally getting around to doing videos. So thanks for watching. Look for the playthrough video. I also did a written interview on our blog, and we did an unboxing on our YouTube channel. So check all those out. Aurelian is a game you're going to want to get. If you enjoy solo games, good solo games, smart solo games, well-designed, fun to play, hard to win solo games, you got to get Aurelian. I also believe you got to get Agricola and Charlemagne, but get one of these 3 and try them out. They're a blast. So thanks for watching. I've been Grant for the Player's Aid.